Hey yo, salute to the people. It's the social forecast. Today is Thursday, July 25th, and I hope you all did something today to further your goals and to help you realize your dreams. All right, let's get into it. I got an article here. Breaking news: the federal government to resume capital punishment after a nearly 20-year hiatus. Now, after I read this article that I came across, I'm going to present two ideas that parallel one another, but that also contradict one another. And there are two pieces of legislation that have, since they've been introduced on the law books, and will always be the two most controversial, argued, and debated issues as far as the criminal justice system and the legal system as a whole is concerned. One being abortion, which I cover often on this platform, and anybody who follows my platform knows my position on abortion, parents' rights, fathers' rights, and the other being capital punishment. So this is a statement that U.S. This is a statement that the U.S. Attorney General William Barr made. It says the U.S. government is poised to carry out the death penalty for the first time in nearly 2 decades. The Justice Department announced in a statement given by U.S. Attorney General Williams that the Federal Bureau of Prisons is to change the federal execution protocol to include capital punishment. Barr also stated that the Prisons Bureau is to schedule the execution of 5 inmates who were found guilty of murder. According to the DOJ, the victims in each case included children, the elderly, and in some cases even included rape and torture of their victims. The Justice Department upheld that the rule of law, which they owe to the victims and to the families to carry forward the sentences imposed by the criminal justice system, and that the federal execution protocol, which previously utilized a 3-drug cocktail, is now going to implement just one, being a drug called pentobarbital. The first of the federal executions is scheduled to take place on December 9th. Daniel Lewis Lee was found guilty of murdering 3 members of a family, including an 8-year-old child. And Lee is a member of a white supremacist group, and he was convicted by a jury at a federal court in Arkansas in 1999. It says in the past 10 years, at least 5 states, New Mexico, Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland, and New Hampshire, have abolished the death penalty outright. And according to the National Conference of State Legislatures, in March, California Governor Gavin Newsom put an executive moratorium on his state's death penalty. In 2 more states, being Washington and Delaware, courts recently ruled that their capital punishment laws are unconstitutional. Now, I'm glad they ended off the article by saying unconstitutional, because that's at the crux of a point that I'm going to make in these 2 ideas that I'm going to present as parallels and as contradicting ideas. So here's the thing, and this is what I want anybody who's watching this, your opinion on. Now, I'm a parent. I'm a person who has family members, loved ones, friends, what have you, just like anybody else. Now, as a human being, right, just being a part of human nature for any of us, if a loved one, a family member, a friend of mine is killed, an innocent victim, a senseless crime, their life is taken, nothing that they did wrong, no way, shape, or form deserved to have their life taken, and it was, would I want justice for that person, that loved one, that family member, that friend? And not just justice, but would I want the same fate for the individual who perpetrated that ultimate act of violence in taking the life of that person that I care about? And I think anybody on a most basic surface would be lying if they said no. I understand that there are those who are overly religious, there are those who are super pro-life that would say it's immoral, it's unconstitutional. And those people, if they're standing on their principles, that's fine. I have no argument with that. But I would still argue that on a most basic human level, being human nature, something that we cannot control, that is largely subconscious, anybody who has ever experienced the loss of a loved one by the hands of another person who did not deserve it. On some level, if we're honest with ourselves, you want revenge that looks similar to the fate that was brought on that loved one for that person who committed that act. I mean, we can just be honest and just admit that as a most basic foundational part of being humans. It just is what it is. Something happens to you, you want the fate of that to be beholden to the same person that committed that act against you. That's just life. It's not about revenge. It's not about being vengeful, being spiteful. It's just life, right? It's like karma. It's just the natural order of things, being human beings. Then on another level, there is the moral compass that we all calibrate for ourselves, our religious and or spiritual beliefs. You know, you could argue laws like capital punishment until you're blue in the face with anybody. And you're going to have somebody on one side, somebody on the other, and both parties would make very good points. And I don't have anything against people who say the death penalty is wrong, is unconstitutional, should be abolished, shouldn't exist, period. I would have points to argue against why that shouldn't be the case, and vice versa. The same for people who say, nah, fuck that. You kill somebody in my family, I want you to suffer that same fate. I can understand that. I can respect that. So I could make some points that would be valid, but I would not be able to outright disagree with that person because they would have merits. They would have some point to what they're saying, and it wouldn't necessarily be wrong. But here's the problem. The criminal justice system, the legal system as a whole, is supposed to exist in a space and environment totally devoid of emotions, that has nothing to do with race, color, social background, economical status, religious background, whatever it is. The criminal justice system is supposed to exist devoid of all those things, and it's just supposed to be about the fundamental rights that we are supposed to have as not just United States citizens under the U.S. Constitution, but as human beings. There are certain human rights that I believe, that I don't think anybody could deny, that we are all supposed to have. The most basic right above and beyond any and all rights is supposed to be the right to life. No one person should have the ability or should have the authority to decide to take another person's life. Now here's where shit gets tricky, because if that's the case, if we're going by the United States Constitution, right, which of all the rights and privileges afforded, there are three foundational, most basic rights that encompass everything, all other rights and privileges. And that is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Every other law protecting its citizens would fall somewhere in the purview of those three most basic foundational rights that a human being should have. And then if you want to throw in a fourth as a bonus, you would say the right to exercise and practice in whatever faith or religion you choose to without interference by the government. And that is a right as well. It's called the separation of church and state. So here's where shit gets tricky. First of all, states, when it comes to certain things like capital punishment, should not be segregated. There should be, if there is a law that exists in one state as it pertains to capital punishment, honestly, it should exist uniformly in all states, because if we're supposed to be states united, not divided, but united under one constitution, under one republic, then laws that pertain to citizens in one state should pertain to citizens in all states. But I'm not going to argue that, not in this video, not the time for it. It would take too long, and there would be too many differences of opinions. So I'm going to move past that. But here's the issue. If the death penalty is unconstitutional on the basis that no person, and when I say person or no, when I say no person, I don't just mean individual. I mean no person, no organization, no government, anybody representing any of those things should have the right to decide that another person's life is going to end. And that would include criminals. You can't exclude anyone if you're going to say that no one has the right to take the life of anyone else. So this is where shit gets tricky. If capital punishment is unconstitutional, as some courts in some states have ruled, then that has to be blanketed across everything. That would also even then include any situation in which a person's life is purposely taken, such as in the case of police officers, and let me know what y'all think about this. I'm just throwing it out there. Police officers who kill individuals in the line of duty who are later found that they had no weapon on them. They were completely unarmed, despite the fact that the officer said their life was in danger. If capital punishment, if taking a life is unconstitutional, then it should apply to everyone and every entity and institution under that constitution equally. 100% equally. So a police officer should not have the privilege to be able to say, I felt like my life was in danger, and so 9 times out of 10, they're justified in taking a person's life. Even in cases where that person was found to be unarmed. I'm not talking about cases where people take a life in protection and preservation of their life, because that should be the only caveat, that if someone is legitimately trying to take your life, you are in imminent danger, then as a basic human right, the natural order of things apply, the laws of nature apply. You have the right to kill someone to protect your own life. Outside of that, anybody who takes a life, be it a police officer in the line of duty, be it a person on the street who got into a disagreement with someone, maybe a fist fight, and decided to pull out a knife or a gun, and then the other person ended up dead. Those individuals, police officer or not, should be stripped of their badges, charged, convicted, and that's it. Automatic, that's the end of it. And then on the other side, where shit gets tricky, on the other side is, if taking a life is unconstitutional, if no one has the right to violate the most basic right that we have as human beings, which is the right to live, then what punishment could possibly exist under that type of a legal system for people who violate that most basic right and law by taking someone's life? What punishment could possibly exist that would really atone for that, other than that person then losing their lives? And that's the argument that people who've lost loved ones would make, is that, listen, I understand it might be wrong to take a life. It might be unconstitutional for the government to decide that a person's going to die, but what is the most fair and equal punishment for a person who takes a life if we're not going to kill them? Are we then responsible that our tax-paying dollars has to then provide that person room and board, even if for the rest of their life behind walls in a prison still living, and whatever condition or whatever loss of rights and privileges they now have to endure being a prisoner, a convicted prisoner? And that individual who would argue that would have merits in that point as well. So I really would like to know what y'all think. Should it be totally abolish capital punishment in every state, in every law books across the nation, period? No capital punishment, that's just it? Or do we continue the back and forth, the contradictions in the legal justice system? Because the question I would ask, though, on either side of this argument you fall, I would ask you this: how can a legal system ever be totally fair and equal and not faulty if that same legal system is a contradiction in and of itself? These are the questions I pose, and I would love to know what y'all think about this. Like, comment, and subscribe. I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.